We're now recording.
Thank you. Okay, so you have to look nice. There we go.
If that's possible.
It gave me the option to leave the meeting. What are we going to say that we shouldn't be recording?
It is July 22nd, 2021. Welcome to the Cameron Park, California Rotary Club. We have a great speaker tonight. We will have our speaker first and then our regular meeting after that. First of all, Mr. Roger Hassler, past president, past district governor, past Rotary everything. Would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, it would be my pleasure, but I want to point out before we start,
Thank you,
that
Carol.
I'm wearing red, Dick is wearing blue, and Jim has a white shirt on. So we got the flag covered.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Roger.
I think that was so good a permanent job should happen.
Say again?
I said, you did it so well, you earned the job permanently.
And soon you'll be able to do it by Zoom from Idaho.
There you go.
All right. Our speaker today,
Words of wisdom?
pardon me?
Are we going to do?
Oh,
words
yes,
of-
I beg your pardon. Thank you. Words of wisdom, Tom Elkin.
Okay. I'm a member of a book club that several of you are as well. And I'm reading a book called The Code Breaker about Jennifer Doudna and other famous microbiologists. And if you're like me, a non-biologist, one of the few things you might remember about the history of biology was that Watson and Crick discovered the double helix structure of DNA. It happened in 1953, the year after I was born. A quote or two from each of them. Francis Crick: "There is no study more vital to man than the study of his own brain. Our view of the universe depends upon it." And James D. Watson, quote, "It's necessary to be slightly underemployed if you are to do something significant." Also, science moves with the spirit of an adventure characterized both by youthful arrogance and by the belief that the truth, once found, would be simple as well as pretty. And now I will preach to the choir. Quote from Jennifer Doudna, a pioneer in gene editing technologies and a contributor to the science that led to our coronavirus vaccines. "Vaccination, which was the first effort to manipulate our immune responses, is one of the greatest advances in protecting human health. Entire pathogenic species have been essentially eradicated by this kind of effective process where you expose an individual to some form of a pathogen and generate lifelong protection." There you go.
Beautifully done. By the way, Bill, before we went back to in-person meetings, our boards set a goal of 80% immunizations before we would do that. We hit, as a club, you may not know this, guys and girls, we hit 95%.
Wow.
So it really was an outstanding achievement. And that was very apropos. Tom, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we have Ben Young joining us. Hi, Ben. All right, our
Bill,
speaker.
before you start, excuse me,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes,
Before you
Mike.
start, I'm going to offer my apologies because I do have to leave early because I have company arriving.
I understand.
So I won't take it personally. Okay, Roger.
Our speaker, Dr. Bill Wittich, is a speaker and author in the field of nonprofit management. He travels an average of 100 days a year, speaking to professional associations and Rotary clubs. His doctorate is from the University of Southern California. He has written and authored over a dozen books, in the association and nonprofit field. His most recent book, brand new book, Stop Recruiting, Start Attracting, is available at Amazon. Longtime Rotarian, past president of the Rotary Club of Laguna Sunrise. He served as assistant governor in District 5180. He's been an instructor at Far West Pets, which our presidents go to for many, many years. And we are very honored to have Dr. Bill Wittich. Bill, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Stop recruiting, start attracting. Let me say that when I was president of my club, I was running around every day, it seems like, trying to recruit some members for my club. I was running around this business and that place in this meeting, not always successfully doing it. Now, what's wrong with recruiting? Because that's a theme. Now, if you take the word recruitment, to me, that means you go find them. You find the new members. So why don't we, instead of recruiting, start attracting people into our clubs? Because if I take the word attraction, it says they find you. Recruitment, you go find them. That's hard. Attraction, they find you. A whole lot easier. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. But let me start with two big questions. First, the recruitment question. Recruitment question says, if I was sitting here at lunch, I'd ask this question with all of your members. I'd say, why do you want more members? Now, when I ask that question, and I do a lot of club members, I get three possible answers all the time. One answer is, new members bring us new ideas, new projects, new service, new things, changes in our club. Or you'll say, we do a lot of work in our club, a lot of service ideas. So I get more help, physically more help from new members. And lastly, you know, Rotary is built on friendship, on fellowship. So we get more friends when we bring in new members. Now, that's fine. Why do you want new members? New
Bill?
ideas, new help, new friends.
Bill,
Yes.
let me apologize for interrupting for a second.
Uh-huh.
Why don't you go to full screen with just you?
Okay, that's fine. Do I do that or do you do that? Because I
Jim,
don't have
do you do
control
that?
over the screen size, do I?
You,
I don't think I control that.
We as individuals can do it.
Yeah, it's being recorded in
speak.
full screen.
Oh, is it? Okay, never mind.
Okay, so we're fine the way we are then.
Yeah,
okay.
I apologize, Bill. Go
That's
ahead.
fine. That's fine. Now, if I ask the attraction question, not the recruitment question, which was why do you want new members? The attraction question is really very different. It's why do they want us? Why do these new members want us? Now, let me stop right there for a second and say I am talking today primarily about bringing in young professionals. Now, when I say young professionals, I mean 20s and 30 and 40-year-olds, because we're not doing still a very good job at Rotary of bringing those young professionals in. So let me take this attraction question. Why do they want us? And again, I've asked this question lots of times to these young folks. Number one, they'll tell you, I want to network. I want to be around the movers and shakers in my town. I want to be mentored by some of these young professionals and older professionals. So I want to network. Number two, they always tell me, I'm looking for a club that's social. I want a warm and friendly club, a club that when I walk in, I feel like that's part of my friendship base. And three, why do they want us? They'll tell you, I want to learn something new. I want to go to a meeting, listen to a speaker, listen to my fellow Rotarians, and always go home with something new. Now, you had that today with your speaker who told us about the various things that he's reading in that book, learning. Number three, why do they want us? They want to have fun. If your club isn't fun, I'll be honest with you, they don't want to be there. They want a club that is, in fact, yes, doing serious work, but in a fun motif. And lastly, they'll tell us service. Now, if you're an old-time Rotarian, and many of us are, it kind of bothers us that service is number 5 on the minds of those young professionals we're looking to attract. All of a sudden, they want to network, they want social, they want learning, they want fun, and then they'll do service. Here's why that is number 5. They are already doing service. Many of these young professionals are married, have kids, so they're volunteering at their child's school. They got a church that they're volunteering at. They're at the senior center, maybe, and they're at the food bank, maybe. Most young professionals today do a lot of service. Now, they still want to do service when they join Rotary, but it's not the primary reason that they are attracted to our Rotary clubs. Now, I've got a few keys, maybe 4 keys to attracting. One is, what is it that benefits you when you join Rotary? You know, we never think about that. We always think about what you can do for the club as opposed to what the club can do for you. You know, it's worthwhile saying, gee, what do I get when I join Rotary? What are the benefits of being a Rotarian? Because that's a tremendous attraction tool. Explain to someone there are some reasons that you get some value. Now, what we should do, it might be worth a meeting sometime, just sit down with the board, maybe with all of your members, and say, gee, what are the benefits of being a Rotarian to me personally? Because that's an attraction tool, folks. Attraction key number 3 is understanding that today's prospective members go shopping. I had an interesting experience when I was president. I had a lady show up in my meeting and she was sitting over there all by herself. So I walked over to introduce myself to her, and I said, ma'am, what is your name? And she says, Kathleen. I said, Kathleen, let me ask you a question. Is this the first time you've been to a Rotary meeting? She said, no, I've been to 5. And she mentioned all 5 clubs that she had visited. She said, North Sac, this one, that one, this one. I said, why in the world, Kathleen, have you been to 5 clubs? She says, I want to find the one that fits my values, the one that feels like me. So it's interesting. People actually do. Remember in the old days, you always joined a club near either where you worked or where you lived. Today, people will actually go a few miles away from home or work and find a club that fits them, they're attracted to. Have you ever shopped your own club? Wouldn't it be interesting to be a mystery shopper? Someone walks into your 3 times a month meeting, lunch meeting, and says, gee, how is this working? Did people jump right up and say, oh, come on in, you're welcome? Did they find you a chair right away? Are they warm and friendly? Now, I'll tell you an experience I had that I will not tell you which club this was, but I went in as a speaker. It was a busy club, real busy. Almost every seat was taken, but I found a seat. I went to sit down and they immediately jumped up and said, that's John's seat. Oh, I thought, I don't think I want to be back at that club. Okay. Shopping your own club is kind of fun sometimes. Realize also as an attraction key that all prospective members have expectations. Everybody expects something. Now, many of your members are in customer service. And you understand when I say expectations, they say, well, yeah, we've got to meet the expectations of our customers. But I really hope they'll say we have to exceed the expectations of the customers. Now, you heard my introduction that when it isn't pandemic season, I'm traveling a lot. 100 days a year is probably minimum. And I was in a year and a half ago before pandemic hit, I was in Chicago, Illinois, speaking to, of all things, a legal organization. And I was at the Hyatt Regency in downtown on Michigan Avenue. Now, when I walked into that Hyatt, I expected it to be luxurious and clean and welcoming and fun. And it was everything like that. But there was a gentleman behind the desk wearing a Hyatt badge on his jacket. But on the other side of his jacket, he had this big round badge that said 10 and 5, 10 and 5. I had no idea what that meant. So luckily he got in the elevator with me to go to my room. And I said, sir, what is that 10 and 5? What does that mean? He says, I am so embarrassed, he said. But at a Hyatt hotel, 10 feet from a guest, you smile. And 5 feet from a guest, you say, good morning, sir. Good morning, ma'am. And he said, we were caught by corporate not doing that. And for a whole month, we have to wear these badges that say 10 and 5. And he says, and everybody's doing just what you did. They're asking me what that means. Now, that same trip, I had my second speaking engagement in Peoria, Illinois, at the Motel 6. Now, what did I expect when I walked into that Motel 6? You all know what I expected. I expected they would have left the lights on for me. In that old commercial about Motel 6, they always leave the light on for you, and they did. So I was happy with that one. Now, I am looking to attract 3 things in my new members, particularly the young professionals that I'm looking for. I want them to have a business attitude, a business attitude. Now, you're going to stop me right there and say, wait a minute, we're not a business. We're not the Chamber of Commerce. No, we are. Started out as a business organization. And in a sense, remember, you even put classification. Sometimes it's on your badge. And you even talk to each other, even if you're retired, about what you did for a living. So I want someone to have a business attitude. I also want them to have a service attitude, meaning I want them to go to meetings regularly. I want them to work on projects regularly, service attitude. And number 3, I want you to have enough time to do all of these things. So I'm looking to attract business attitude, service attitude, and enough time. In other words, folks, I'm not looking for just a warm body. Now, you all know what a warm body is. Kind of person that shows up once in a while, doesn't do much service, just kind of hangs around once in a while. No, I want someone to get really involved with my Rotary Club. And I don't want just a checkbook. You know, we need money. We do a lot of good things with that money in Rotary, but I don't want someone who doesn't attend meetings and doesn't do service. They just write a check. Okay, so let's put those aside. And let's right now define the type of person that you want to attract. Now, I'm going to give you 4 groups that I think we can work on attracting. One is, I've already said it, young professionals. How old? 20s, 30s, and 40s. Now, I also want to look for family-oriented people with spouses, people with kids into my club, and I want more women in my club. Most of our clubs are not really doing tremendous with women. The average in a Rotary is about 26% of its membership are women. And I want more boomers. Boomers are fantastic. Boomers are just great. Now, let's talk about those 4. Now, I got lots more I can tell you about different categories, but I want to focus on those 4 today. Young people, just how young? 20s, 30s, and 40s. Now, y'all know when Rotary was formed, 1905. You know who did it, Paul Harris. But do you know how old he was? He was 36 years old when he started Rotary. And his 3 fellow attorneys were 38, 40, and 41. So what was Rotary when it formed? A young man's business organization. Women weren't yet invited into the club, but it was a young man's business organization. Now, the truth is, young folks don't know anything about Rotary. Now, you've been watching me drink my Starbucks mocha here. I'm a Starbucks guy. I love to go to Starbucks. I'm there probably every day. And luckily now, my Starbucks, you can sit inside and talk to people. And that's what you find inside Starbucks. You find people sitting there with their smartphones out and their computers out, but they're talking to each other. So I found a gentleman the other day in my Starbucks. He was about 30 years old. And I asked him, I says, I got to ask you a question. He says, yes, sir. I says, what do you know about Rotary? He looked at me and he says, well, is that like one of them Kiwanis Lions? Is that like Grandpa used to belong to? And I thought, there's the problem. Now, when I talk to somebody about Rotary, I never talk about Rotary. I talk about what we do in our community. And I always get the same response. Wow, you do that right here where I live? See, I don't talk about Rotary. I talk about what Rotary does. Now, number 2, if I want to attract these young people, my projects need to involve something green, something environmental, something climate oriented, community garden, food bank, something that would really interest them. A green project does interest most of the young professionals. If I want to attract family-oriented people, I got to have projects that involve family. I got to be able to invite the kids to a meeting once in a while. I've got to have projects where the children and the spouse can be a part of it. And you know what's going to happen many times? You'll get both the husband and the wife as Rotarians. I can speak about that because my wife is a Rotarian. Because she got so involved with the service projects, she says, I have to join that too. Now, if I want more women, I've already said, Rotary is only about 26%. So if your club is larger than that, thank goodness. But I read something the other day that I think would interest you. Over 40% of business owners are women. Over 40%. Now, why isn't Rotary at least 40%? Why isn't it 50% women in that case? We certainly could use their talent as well. Okay, and lastly, boomers. What we know about boomers, and many of you looking at the screen are probably boomers, they are retiring at the rate of 10,000 a day until the year 2030. Now, let's talk about retirement just for a minute, because you know what that means to most people. It means, whoa, I'm going to travel. I'm going to get the boat and the RV. I'm going to drive around the country. They'll do it for a year, and then they pull over one day and say, now what? And the now what, folks, is Rotary, which is a whole new meaning to their life, because they're missing what they used to do, even though they won't admit that many times. Okay. I'm suggesting today that you define the groups that you want to attract, because each group, be it young professionals, be it women, being business people, are attracted slightly differently, because you want to tailor your attraction methods to the group. Now, how would you define your current membership? Now, I'm looking at the screen, pretty much what you got, but you know, are you seeking to attract more of the same? And the answer is, yep, to some extent, sure. But we'd like to add some of those other categories you're talking about. Some of those young professionals, maybe more women, maybe more boomers, maybe more anything. Now, as I begin to wrap up today, let me talk about where you can attract, because that's an important thing. Where can you attract these new members we're talking about? Number one, you're probably not very good at the first category, the best category. Your friends. You are not inviting your friends to come to a meeting to work on service projects because you are probably a little bit nervous, embarrassed, scared, worried that they'll say no. So you don't ask them. But you know why your friends would be perfect Rotarians? Because they're just like you. Think about that. Your friends are more like you than different than you. That's why they're your friends. So friends are a natural. Number two, I love my Chamber of Commerce, and you all have a Chamber of Commerce, and I go to the Chamber of Commerce luncheons and dinners and ribbon cuttings. You know why? Because it's full of potential Rotarians. They need us in many ways because they're in business. I go to a ribbon cutting. That's a brand new business opening up in town. That person needs Rotary because they want to get involved. Now, the reason I want to get involved with them is maybe for three things. One is I want them to become a member, or two, I want them to do some service, or maybe I want them to contribute some dollars or product to us. So there's lots of reasons to get involved with the chamber. Now, local businesses. Now today, it's now after 4:00, but I've been at 5 different businesses today. I was at Home Depot. I was at the cleaners. I was at the bank. And my wife had 2 things on a honey-do list that I had to pick up for her too. But you know what? When I walked into those 5 businesses today, I knew the owners. I knew the managers because I worked to build a relationship with them. Again, why am I doing that? Same 3 things. I want either them to become a Rotarian, or I want them to help in a service, or I want them to give me something as a gift in terms of product or supplies or money. And if they know me, they're more likely to take care of our needs as Rotarians. Okay, this one is going to be a problem because I already found out you've got a minister, and you probably got more than one minister. So he's not going to like what I'm going to say right now. Now, I go to church on Sunday, and last Sunday during the sermon, I'm looking around that church for Rotarians. And I spotted Mabel over here. And I said to myself, Mabel would make a great Rotarian. And sure enough, when the service is over, I went out to the coffee pot and I talked to Mabel. Now, what did I talk to Mabel about? I talked to Mabel about what we do. I didn't talk about Rotary. I talked about what Rotary does. And she said the same thing I hear all the time. Oh, you do that right here in Elk Grove where I live? Yes, Mabel, we do. Nonprofit organizations. I'll bet you that half of your members, maybe more, serve on a board of a nonprofit, food bank, senior center, church, school. You know what? Every one of your fellow board members should be in Rotary. They already have that thought in their mind of doing, and they'll do more. Okay, social media. I looked at your website. It's very nice. I looked at your Facebook page. Very good. I didn't see an Instagram account. Instagram means you can put up hundreds of pictures of every activity and meeting that you have. And who looks at that? Young professionals. Secondly, I don't see a LinkedIn account. There's over 100 Rotary clubs on LinkedIn. What is LinkedIn? It's a business website. And you know who looks at that? Again, the young professionals. Now, what are they looking for when they look at your club on LinkedIn? They look at who the speaker is going to be next week. And they want to come learn something new from that speaker. Now, they're not coming to Rotary to join, but your job is, once you get them there, to make them feel the need to become a member. They're really only coming to hear the speaker, which is fantastic. And lastly, I didn't see a Twitter account. You're going, what? Me tweet? Yes, you tweet. That's right. You know what Twitter does? You send out a couple of hundred characters, one sentence of who the speaker is going to be next week. And who looks at those tweets? Young professionals for the most part. And they want to come hear the fire chief. They want to come hear the insurance professional. They want to hear whoever the speaker is going to be. And lastly, I already said it a bunch of times, Starbucks. I spend time at Starbucks because I'll be honest with you. I make a lot of relationships with young professionals at Starbucks, and about 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 15 is by ratio. I'll get them to come to my meeting to hear the speaker next week. And once I get them in my meeting, then I can work them to become Rotarians because they don't know what Rotary is. I already said that. Young folks don't know about Rotary. So is your website up to date? Yes, it is. Now, suggestion, and you're doing a pretty good job of this, make sure that a speaker each week, you have their photograph, you have their bio, and you have what they're going to talk about. Because remember, that's the only thing your young professionals particularly will come look at. Who's speaking? Who can I hear? What can I learn? And once they get there, then you need to work on them to attract them into your club. 3 final hints to close. 1, don't invite anybody to a meeting. What? No, don't invite them to a meeting. Invite them to have lunch with you. And they're going to come where some of your friends are. And tell them we got some friends going to lunch today. And invite them. In fact, if you're going to invite them to lunch, you pay for it. They're your guest. Number 2, excuse me, don't talk about polio. Don't talk about babies dying in Africa. Don't talk about water problems in Nairobi. Talk about what you do in Cameron Park. Talk about what you do in your own backyard. Because that's what people will say. Whoa, you do that right. Now, after you get them to be Rotarians, then you talk about eliminating polio and water problems and babies dying and all those kinds of things that we do so well in Rotary. And thirdly, always listen for the word try. John was a friend of mine. I invited him to be my guest for lunch. And he said, where are we going? And I said, well, John, it's with a group of my friends. They're fellow Rotarians. He says, Bill, I'm going to try to be there. I said, no, John, you're not. I'm going to pick you up at 11:45, and I'm going to buy you lunch. You're going to be there. Y'all know that when you say try, it's the same as saying, no, I'm not going to do it. So always listen for the word try and then work them. Now, that's all I've got, and I'm willing to answer any questions, or if you're hostile or angry at me, you can do that too. So I'm yours. Any questions, any thoughts?
Let's start with some questions. And that was, by the way, that was fabulous. Not only for Rotary, but whether or not you're in the insurance business or in the church business or lawyers or whatever, all of that works. How about some questions? Who's first?
When do we talk about the 18 levels of membership?
Don Fuller, unmute.
Somebody's on
Now
mute.
I'm unmuted.
Go ahead, Don.
Bill, thank you. Very interesting and inspiring comments. I wondered if you could expand a little more on what you've tried and where you've found success in attracting women members.
Most of my experience with women members have been having other women in the club work with me on it. When I get a lead to attract someone, I'll send one of our female members to give her a call. And I find that's much more effective than my approaching that particular woman. And we've got probably in my club, I'm in the Passport Club right now, and we probably got a dozen women who literally every time I call them up and say, would you please call Janet? She's in insurance. You're in real estate. I think you too, you should invite her to a meeting. So that's been my best success.
Okay, thank you.
Huh?
Carol, before we get to that, Carol, I'd like you to comment on that.
On being able to give the
Recruit-
positive, yeah.
Recruit women into the
But
club.
how a woman benefits from being a Rotarian. Because I can tell you that my benefit was the friendship first, because I didn't want to get too involved in my own life. I wanted to be out of there, and the service and the reward of just belonging to an organization that accomplishes so much, that does so much.
Great. And by the way, Bill,
you talked about social, and you talked about fellowship, two really important things that
Yeah.
sometimes we overlook in Rotary.
Yeah.
and Bill, we have about 10 female members,
Uh-huh.
about
Out of a
25,
total membership of how much?
40.
Okay. So you're about average, which is 26%. You're 25%. So that's fine.
Other questions? Dave Sargent.
I start off with a compliment. I really appreciated the practicality. I enjoy lists, and I enjoy your comments about the pieces of each of your lists, and it all made very good sense and hung very well for me. The one question I had is, you said, you're bringing a friend to have lunch with you,
Uh-huh.
and you get to the meeting. And then what I heard you say is, and then everybody can work on them. That sounded a lot like recruitment to me, and I wanted to clarify what you meant by work on them.
That's a good, thank you for that comment. What I do when I bring a friend in, surprisingly, is I make sure I don't sit with the friend. I actually put him or her in with a group of Rotarians who, I don't know what I mean either by working on them, but I want them, and I work with our membership committee sometimes to say, when a guest comes, please let them know what we do more than who we are. Because we spend so much time in Rotary talking about where we came, what happened, where to start, and we never really talk a lot about what we physically do in terms for the senior center, for the food bank. So that's kind of what I do with my people. I'm suggesting that I don't ignore them when they come to a meeting, but I want them to meet, and I always put them near people who are like them. Now, I'm not playing psychologist, but I try to find someone either the same age or same background that I kind of sit them with. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew and Dwight, you have some good comments. I'd like you to talk about that. You have to unmute.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and yeah, so actually kind of on that last part about, that's kind of how I got involved in Rotary. One of my members, Doug Ely, who's the membership chair in the Quincy Club currently, basically told me after church one Sunday, he's like, I'm bringing you to Rotary tomorrow. So I said, okay, let's do it. And so pretty much that was kind of my end to Rotary, is he invited me to lunch basically and introduced me to friends, and haven't looked back since.
And you're still talking to me after I talked about, instead of listening to the sermon, I was looking for another Rotarian.
Yeah. And I'm open about it too in church and our services too, and talk about what we do. And that resonates a lot too, about what we do in the community.
Right. And the church or the temple or the synagogue is a great place to find Rotarians. And we don't do that often enough. We just don't think that those people in there already have service in their hearts.
Yeah. So actually in my last congregation that I just came from in Quincy, we had about 7 or 8 Rotarians in the congregation.
Good.
Dwight, can you talk about your comments?
A little bit of a joke, but I'm in insurance, and I always think that if you should be upfront and honest with people. So I might not quite use the word, like, I think that I'm going to invite you to lunch is a little bit deceitful. especially if you don't even sit with them.
I understand what you're saying. Sure.
I would say, you know, I'm going to invite you to a Rotary lunch or lunch with my Rotary friends. So you never say the word meeting or appointment but I think saying Rotary implies that people already kind of know a little bit about it, but you're still being kind of a little bit more honest, I believe.
It's a nice comment. I'll tell you where the difference in my mind is when I'm dealing with young professionals, they do not want to come to a Lions, Kiwanis, Rotary meeting very likely. The older, meaning 40, 50, 60s, will jump at the chance because they know what that means. So I got to be a little, I don't want to be dishonest, but I want to be a little more subtle about inviting the young people to what they might consider is a boring old man's group. Now, be honest, when they get there, they're going to be around other people their age, but I got to somehow attract them to the club. And I understand what you're saying, though. It makes sense to me. Be honest.
I would also add, in agreement with Dwight, that like-mindedness is attractive no matter what age.
Yes.
And
yes.
When you were talking about inviting one of your a best friend
right.
to Rotary, that resonated with me. I have a couple of people that I've never invited. They're the same retiree age that I am, and now I wonder if I shouldn't.
Right, and with I'll tell you, with my friends like that, who are probably more likely my age, I talk about Rotary with them all the time. When we go to dinner or go out for a beer or whatever, I talk about Rotary. So when I say I want you to come to a Rotary meeting, I don't fake it. I don't say I want you to come to a meeting. I say I want you to come be my guest at my Rotary meeting. But that's what I meant by the fact that the younger people are less likely to want to come to a Rotary meeting just because it's Rotary, but they will come to hear the speaker quite often.
Well, I think that your point about younger people often being involved deeply in family, children, or other causes,
right,
puts up a flashing red light called another obligation. And time is a precious resource.
That's true. Now I've had good experience in terms of bringing families in because it's one more family activity. But a club has to be willing to let the kids show up sometime and let the spouses hang around. And not all clubs are like that. I know that. Yep.
Let me make a comment before we get to some other questions. Bill, we did a formal visioning process in 2007 and another one in 2014. And what was interesting about that process, which I led, by the way, because that's what I do for a living, was that in 2007, the emphasis by the people at the visioning was international projects. By 2014, it was community projects. Remember that, Bill Hughes? And so there was a huge shift in terms of what the club wanted to do. And for a number of years, we did international projects all over the place. And by 2014, we were building a community observatory with multiple buildings and so forth. We still do international, but it was interesting, the emphasis in projects. And so I absolutely agree with the fact that talking about what we do in the community is important. And as an old Methodist, as Andrew understands, Methodists are like Rotarians. They're out there hustling members, right? You know, our job is to proselytize, but you don't do it about the church or faith. You do it about what the church does, right?
Yep.
And so I think, Bill, you're right on in terms of what clubs like us do. And let me ask you a question, and other people can think about it. Service clubs are struggling in the United States. They're doing pretty well overseas. Why is that?
I have an entire talk on that topic. Sometime we should do that. But let me just briefly just say, a lot of what we do in Rotary doesn't fit the younger people. They don't like some of their, they don't want songs that are so old that they don't have any idea what you're doing. They don't like some of the procedures that go on. They don't like fines. They like happy dollars. So there's a whole lot of things in Rotary that for us old timers are hard to give up, but it also turns off. And the clubs that are making the change are simply making some substitutions. Substitution being no fines, happy dollars. You know, some of the things bother me. They don't want to hear the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, I don't agree with that, but that's what I hear quite often. They don't want this and they don't want that because they are a different breed of cat than we are. But I do have a talk like this. So if you want it sometime, I'd be happy to come back sometime and talk
I
about
suspect
that.
we will have you back for that very talk.
Right.
Any other questions? Just very thought-provoking. I think just brilliant. Some of these things we do pretty well. Some of these things we don't do very well at all. But Bill, well, this was terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity too. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to share that I took 4 pages of notes.
Oh, wonderful.
Take
Thank you.
back, and I'm going to do my best to parrot off as much of your talk as I can remember, because
Good.
I think is very practical.
Thank you. And of course, now there's more in that book called Stop Recruiting, Start Attracting on Amazon.
I'll look that up too.
Who made that plug? Not me.
I'm gonna buy that book, I can tell you. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to move along right now and let you enjoy the rest of your meeting today.
Thank you, Bill, very much.
Thank you very much. Uh-huh.
Oh, by the way, Bill, before you leave, our next speaker is Jim Abercrombie, who is the general manager of El Dorado Irrigation District, and that's our public water agency here in El Dorado County. That will be an in-person meeting, and it goes to the point about having a speaker who is relevant and current. Water, obviously, is a big issue right now in California, and water is followed quickly after that by fire. And Jim, who is a Rotarian, has spoken to us before, and I expect a good return for that, because what he's going to talk about impacts every single person in El Dorado County. And so we look for speakers like that everybody wants to listen to, because they can hear about what's happening where they live. And that's going to be a great meeting in 2 weeks from now.
Good. Now put him on your website, picture,
Oh, yeah.
background. What are you going to talk about? That's right. Good.
That's right. I know Tom Elkin will do that.
I'll see you all later.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Let's move to a regular meeting, and we go to announcements, and that was the first announcement that Abercrombie, who's spoken to us before, will be next week. And if you followed anything with Sacramento Bee, the whole thing is about Folsom adding 30,000 new residents to the city of Folsom, whether they have water or not, which is kind of an interesting approach. And so for El Dorado County, we haven't had water restrictions yet, but it's on the way. And so we have done as a club some international water projects, mostly headed up by Bill Etlich. Bill's an engineer and dealt with water issues for a couple of years, as I recall, Bill.
A couple of years.
Philippines, Russia, and a lot of places. So that's going to be a great meeting. Any other announcements that somebody'd like to bring up before we move forward? Okay. Let me give you a preliminary announcement. A member of the community named Mike Turney, who is a real estate investor, has approached us over the last few months, and he's now finalizing that with creating a gift for the club of $2 million to build a planetarium at our observatory site. It's just in the early stages, He's developing a family trust with one of our members, Janet Ellerman, to do that. And so while that is early on, it's exciting that someone wants to invest in the club and its membership, just like Mr. Rasmussen did, what, 15 years ago, Bill? Daryl Rasmussen was a real estate developer who owned a lot of property in Cameron Park, who approached us with a matching grant of $100,000. We exceeded that by then some, and that created a foundation. Dave Sargent will mention the name of it and the amount of over $350,000, not only funding things like scholarships, but creating places for organizations like Seroptimus to park their money for a not-for-profit. Is that about right, Dave?
That is correct. It's the Cameron Park Rotary Community Foundation. Yeah, actually, all members of the Rotary Club they're not members of the board, not elected members of the board, but they are and form the membership of the Community Foundation as well.
And that's an investment in the club. And this is an investment, that's a long range project, but it took us well over a decade to plan and build the first part of the observatory, which is now a whole complex of structures and programs going on with lots of different organizations. So that's exciting news. We'll keep you informed as we work on that. Any other announcements? Okay. All right. We have more new members coming. In the last year, by the way, even with COVID, Ann Eckert has brought in Marlon Pino-Jones, Rob White, Andrew Davis, Gary Clark, and Dwight Benz into the club, which has been just outstanding. In the district, it's been very difficult to do that. And I'm really pleased about our new members and applaud them joining us. And we are honored by that. Okay, if no more announcements, how about some happy bucks?
Mike,
Dave,
I would like to do some happy bucks.
Okay, Hughes.
I turned 80 this week, and I want to share $80, go into the Polio Plus Foundation.
Wonderful.
You got that, Tom? Okay, who's next? Happy bucks. Is no one happy?
Hey, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Happy bucks.
I got some happy bucks. Just got back from San Francisco yesterday. My wife and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary.
How much happy bucks are there?
Well, I think I'll do more than 20. How about 50?
All right.
So I'm double happy.
And how was San Francisco?
It's great. Went to the see the Dodger Giants game. Or I'm sorry, my bad. I said San Francisco. We actually went down to Los Angeles.
Oh.
We saw the Dodgers play the San Francisco Giants. We saw the Dodgers hit a walk-off home run to end the game.
All right.
That's okay. We got him back last night, Ben.
I haven't seen that one. I taped it. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, sorry. It's all over the internet. That's kind of a new innovation, Ben. You might want to look at it.
I'll check my VHS tape recorder.
Yeah, do that.
Comment, you must have some happy bucks.
Who's that?
Dave Sargent, you must have some happy bucks with that comment about the Giants.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm happy with last night's walk-off win, but what I'm more happy about, and I'll be $10 happy, was this weekend was a 2 days of wine tasting on the new format for Passport Weekend for the Winery Association. And my brother and his daughter, my niece, came up and we did a couple days of wine tasting.
Oh, what is the new format, Dave?
Yeah, it's called The Great Out There. Instead of you just going to a winery, tasting 4 or 5 of their vintages and them just serving hors d'oeuvres sort of buffet style, you make a reservation at each winery and they sit you down at a table distancing you from all other tables. Your group sits together and they give you a flight of 4 or 5 tastes of wine, and then they bring you some very nice finger food. And the way it worked out, you could go to about 4 or 5, but we went to 4 wineries each day. And by the time you were through drinking and eating, you certainly didn't need dinner.
Nice. By the way, Ben, thank you for posting young professional family man down there.
Hey, I listened to the meeting.
Any other happy bucks? Tom Elkin.
I'll be $20 happy in golf this week. I hit a 40-yard wedge shot that trickled into the hole for the first time in a long time. So
All right.
we'll go for that.
Yeah. Very nice. Where'd you play?
Ansel Hoffman in Carmichael.
Oh, that's a nice course.
Yeah, it's a beautiful course. Beautiful trees, but too many of them that line every fairway.
Dick Franks from the Alps.
Yes, since our last meeting, there was the European Soccer Championship, and I won't tell you who won, but 20 happy bucks.
20?
I understand they're going crazy in Italy.
I'm sure they did. It's been a long time.
Yep. Unfortunately, the women's soccer team for the United States was not so lucky.
Yeah, because that where you're at? You're in the Alps there, or I mean, you're close to what?
This is Patagonia, the southern part of South America.
All right.
Some other happy bucks. Tom put me down for 25 bucks. And that is, I'm very pleased with after COVID, which was not much fun. The meetings at the country club are coming back very nicely. Virtually everybody who didn't want to use Zoom has come back to the in-person meetings. And I think we're gonna get there. At some point, we'll be doing probably another visioning a year from now and that kind of thing to see where we are. But I'm encouraged by the enthusiasm of the members and what's happening. And I think we're going to be, oddly enough, just fine. Any other happy bucks? Any other comments for the good of the order? Well, that was an outstanding speaker. And I like what Dave Sargent talked about, the practicality. I like what he talked about not selling Rotary per se as an organization, but what it is we actually do. There's an ancient book by a guy named Sinclair Lewis, who most of you have never heard of, who was a muckraker in the early 20th century, wrote a book called Babbitt. Anybody ever heard of that or read it? Babbitt was a book about service clubs, and it was not complimentary. What he talked about was bureaucracy, but I think we've moved beyond that. And I think what this club does is frankly something that very few clubs do. And I think what we're going to do in the years to come is going to be outstanding with everybody's help. So thank you very much. If there are no further comments, good to see everybody. We'll see you in person again 2 weeks from now. Remember, that's August 5th. First 3 weeks of every month, we meet in person at the country club. The 4th, we do Zoom. The 2 members who showed up today at the country club for the meeting, who should remain nameless, don't read their emails, I understand, So we'll try to keep that schedule going as best we can. Thank you, everybody. Good
Next
meeting.
week we're dark.
Dark next week.
Next week we're dark. Right.